There is a certain anchor who has been only selling hate for 11 years, he has been getting lynchings done literally. He's been getting targets painted on the back of colleagues like you and me. And now today he is like a darling among the liberals because he's done 2 stories against the government.
Let's talk about this anchor for a moment, right? I think we both know whom we are talking about.
I called out one, I will name her.
I could not, talk about that issue publicly till now because we were both colleagues at the same newspaper.
Just because you're a minority journalist, you can get away with murder. I refuse these labels. I'm sorry. I will not be, even the label of a liberal, I refuse now.
Swati, we live in times when the media in India is almost as polarized as our politics is.
Worse. Politicians at least say hello to each other when they meet privately.
And journalists?
I don't think so. I think they just give each other what I would call death rays, hate looks these days.
Well, we'll get to all of that. But journalism was never meant to be like this. In the age that you and I were shaped and formed as journalists.
It was collegial. We would admire each other's stories. If I thought you did brilliant reporting, I would actually, say, brilliant, let's get that followed up because, Barkha has really broken a huge story here.
And and you've done that. You've been so fair-minded in giving credit, sometimes to me, sometimes to others on X. And I hope I've always done the same with you. But let me start by talking a little bit about you as a test case. You have criticized the government on occasion. You have stood with the government on issues on occasion. And for this, you are often criticized by both camps. The camps in this case are the left wing and the right wing. They're not able to figure out what label to give you. My question would be, which box to put you in? My question would be, why does anybody need a box? Why do you have to be in a box? We're all thinking free-minded individuals. We will make up our own mind issue by issue. How has that been for you? How claustrophobic has it been for you to have both sides sometimes bringing these labels to you?
Well, it's terrible, Barkha. Both of us have been, we've been trolled, we've been attacked. I wrote a book about it. Mm-hmm. That book became something that the liberals cheered and, it was celebrated worldwide. It was a huge international bestseller. And then they thought that, this is somebody who is, somebody who's actually exposed something that we all cried about, whined about. And then I was expected to believe all of the shibboleths they believe in, be part of their silo. Now, the thing is that I'm a journalist and I'm an old-fashioned journalist. I did not become a journalist because I wanted to be a real activist. Today, I think activism is what they really want to do. They're not journalists. I wanted to tell a story. I didn't want to be the story. I wanted to go out and explore and, satiate my curiosity. Yeah. I think being nosy and being obstinate are the only 2 qualities you really need to be a journalist. And I'm still an old-fashioned journalist. So I refuse these labels. I'm sorry. I will not be, even the label of a liberal I refuse now because, apparently if you support our army, you say Dhurandhar is not a bigoted strike at the heart of, Zulm and other such ideologies. You're a Sanghi, whatever that is. Yeah. I have never been anything in my like that in my life.
So it's very interesting that you, I want to talk about Dhurandhar, but one of the things you said struck me. You said today you reject the label of being a liberal because of what it's come to be associated with. And yet your best-selling book was loved, cheered on by the liberals. Do the liberals love you today?
They hate me. And that's really sad because they still cite my book, That is the only proof they have. Now, that is the thing. We are journalists. We are giving proof. I'm an investigative journalist, as are you. And, I'm a troll. Was an investigation into the IT cell of a particular political party where I established the links, the linkages, the connects, how we got mass trolled, industrially trolled, how they trolled Rahul Gandhi. So, now if they don't like me, but they love the work. The thing is, they should only love the work. I don't want to be liked. Journalists are not there to be liked. We are there to hold a mirror to everybody. It's not that our mirror is so selective that we'll expose, when the government put Pegasus on me, I was one of the very few people that because it's an extremely expensive software to monitor someone. I wish they'd given me the money instead. I would have happily offered up my life for examination. But the thing is that at that time, 3 or 4 other journalists falsely claimed that they were also on the Pegasus list. Now, either you are actually a journalist and wear it as a badge of honor, or you are a fraud. And you pretend to be taking on the government, which is also very convenient, while raking it in from, a lot of other sources.
Let's start with Dhurandhar. I think it's an instructive fault line, though it should never have been a fault line. I watched the film. I loved it. There was nothing remotely anti-Muslim.
And we both covered all the events that happened in the movie.
And I think you pointed that out on X, whether it's 26/11, the IC 814 hijacking, the Parliament attack. These have all been part and parcel of our trajectories as professional journalists. Why was Dhurandhar even a fault?
I remember you even wanted to go with Jaswant Singh.
I'll tell you a story there. Yeah. There was a Maruti van getting into the Palam technical area because the plane that was carrying the 3 terrorists in exchange for the passengers was on the tarmac. And I jumped into the back of that van, hid in amid the sandwich boxes, reached the tarmac, looked up at Mr. Singh and said, "Sir, please take me on this plane." And in his baritone voice, he said, "No, Barkha, what are you doing here?" Very politely. By that time, all hell had broken loose outside the gates because the other journalists were complaining. And of course, I was sent back, but not for lack of trying. But as you said, these are...
See, Barkha, now, 2 things. One here is your passion for the story, which is one of the only reasons you're one of the few journalists I respect, because you were an editor at NDTV. You didn't need to do that. You could have just sat there and, sat in the studio, getting your makeup freshened. Both of us are not wearing any right now. And, giving gyan. You didn't do that. Yeah. You have that crazy passion for the story. So there you were trying to get into... to go to Kandahar, or you were there on hitting the ground on COVID. Most of our colleagues don't do that. And I don't respect them for that. Back to Dhurandhar.
Why was Dhurandhar a fault line at all? Why does Dhurandhar have anything to do with whether you're pro-Modi or anti-Modi, pro-Gandhi or anti-Gandhi? Why?
Well, also have you noticed another thing which is very funny is that people who've never done journalism, who used to read the teleprompter in Rajya Sabha TV, have suddenly become journalists, have suddenly also become movie critics, are talking about the zulm, the bigotry, ek aur zakhm of Dhurandhar, calling it pure propaganda. So I was amused by that. I called that out on X. Because, we've actually covered these events. And frankly, if you look at within the confines of a Bollywood film, I thought Dhurandhar was very, very well done.
And very well made film.
Yeah, and what it exposed is something that all of us national security journalists knew about. So I don't quite understand this if you're part of, if you like the Congress party, you should just automatically hate it, or that it has exposed something. It's the truth. Like it, don't like it. As the liberals as we would say, or as I would say, watch with your remote. Don't like it, don't watch it, don't buy the ticket.
No, but also this narrative that it was anti-Muslim conflates India's Muslims with Pakistanis, which I think is offensive.
Again, exactly. Now that is dangerous. That is really dangerous because, why are you saying that all Indian Muslims are terrorists? Just because, there is, and I have to say this, and I'm sorry I have to say this, and I hope this doesn't upset too many people because, I'm already probably one of India's most hated journalists. But, there is a gang of people. Indian Muslims are suffering, there is no doubt about it. But there is a gang of very, very, people who are doing very well in life of what I call the zulm and the ek aur zakhm industry. Who are catering, journalists who are catering to a foreign gaze, who are using the pain and the marginalization of Indian Muslims and who want to keep them in that silo, who never want them to join the mainstream, just so they can peddle this agenda of zulm, of, hamare saath ek aur zakhm, hamara hijab humse chhina gaya. Are, agar aapko itna usme belief hai, aap bhi hijab pehno. One rule for them, one rule for another rule for other people. All they peddle to the Western press is just these stories. They actually, it's like peddling pain. It's like, it's poverty porn. It's like pain porn. It's like minority porn that they're peddling to the West. And, honestly, it needs to be called out because it is preventing Indian Muslims from, even feeling normal or trying to, live normal lives. Nobody's denying that there are problems. But just to focus on that and just to keep, it's like scratching away.
Or to make that the singular India story.
Correct. Exactly. The singular India story and it's always I. It's I, me, myself. I went to watch a film. I was hurt. I was shattered. Is that journalism? No.
What is journalism? I think this is a very important question for our generation in particular today, who believed that journalism was telling the story no matter how inconvenient. Sometimes it would upset or challenge your own beliefs.
Yeah, you were in NTV, you would have got calls from both camps. Arun Jaitley would have called you to grumble, Barkha, ye kyun kar rahi ho yaar?
I have to say he grumbled very convivially and never stopped talking.
Yeah.
And I think I have all the time in the world for people who are able to disagree in an amiable way.
Correct.
I remember I was young and not an editor, and L.K. Advani, who was, I think, then Deputy Prime Minister, said, "Ghar aiye chai peene," and I went, and he basically argued with me about some story I had done, and then very amiably offered me a cup of tea. And I respected him so much for that moment because he didn't agree with something I'd done, and he continued to be civil about it.
And he continued to reach out to you.
And he continued to talk to me. He continued to talk to me.
Exactly. Or Ahmed Patel, I once quoted him in a story, and I didn't know, I was a young greenhorn, that Ahmed Patel was the great not to be quoted.
Yeah.
So he called me, abhi very amused, tumne mujhe quote kar diya. I said, हाँ. So he said, chalo koi baat nahi, tum seekh jaogi. But the thing is, they never stop talking. Now, we are journalists. As like I said, we are not activists. We are not morcha.
You know what our tagline is? Na chamcha, na morcha. That's our tagline. Na morcha,
correct. No, we are not Godi. We are not Panna Pramukh. We are just old-fashioned journalists. We just want to tell a story. So, this hatred that you could be telling a story which is inconvenient to a ex-political party or tomorrow to another political party. We are not embedded with political parties for God's sake. That, just because you've done a story against the Congress today, you've gotten some packets from the BJP. And by the way, people who do that, there is a certain anchor who has been only selling hate for 11 years. He has been getting lynchings done literally. He's been getting targets painted on the back of colleagues like you and me. And he's made probably 3,000, 4,000 crores in the business. And now today he's like a darling among the liberals.
Because? Of
course, because they're such fools. Because he's done 2 stories against the government. So this blind derangement is crazy. You will accept anybody, you will embrace anybody, however dodgy.
Let's talk about this anchor for a moment, right? I think we both know whom we are talking about. And
well, he's named us again and again.
So you're of course talking about Arnab Goswami.
Yes.
And let's talk for a moment about exactly what you described. That for 11 years, the liberals hated him. Last 10, 11 years, they've hated him. They have accused him of communal hate mongering. You and I have been named using falsehoods to basically
anti-nationals,
to basically incite violence. Because when you call somebody an anti-national,
on our back.
Absolutely. And then now come and I will say that in many ways, and you have to give him that, he changed the discourse of what television news used to be and then became.
But you remember that witch hunt against Riya, mujhe drug do. Is that journalism, that hysteria, that madness, that insanity almost,
Absolutely.
In COVID, you put a young girl in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my question is, today to see the same audience, the same set of people say, oh my God, what's happening? Because on 2 or 3 issues, his politics coincide with yours. I mean, what do you make of it?
Politics cannot be everything. I think it's pathetic. I think it's grasping. I think it's needy. I also think that it exposes how hollow they are. Because, frankly, on one hand, they talk about Nuremberg trials. They say, sab kuch yaad rakha jayega. You and I are Sanghis. We support the army. We are God knows.
How is supporting the army?
Being Sanghi.
Being anything.
Because you're giving
but being Indian.
Yeah, exactly. And why are you giving away the Indian nationalism card to an exclusive group?
Yeah.
What are you? Are you not Indian?
Yeah.
Is being liberal or is being member of this society of hating someone, making sure you're not even Indian?
Let's look at an example from the West.
No. So, but now that an anchor has gone back to the fold, do these people feel stupid? It's like the Anna movement, it's a mask. He was wearing a mask. It's like he was wearing a mask. These people are such fools. They were literally fooled by him again.
Elaborate on that. You're basically saying that he swung back onto... Look, his argument would be, I'm doing what I want to. I'm not seeking your approval or your criticism.
I think he must be laughing at their approval. I mean, I think anybody would laugh at their approval because they're so needy and they're so desperate. It's like, an abused ex. Come back. All is forgiven if you just believe in us. Because the point is they really don't believe in anything. If I say today that I think the Indian army did extremely well in Operation Sindoor, they would have a problem with it. Why? Why should it be a problem? I mean, if as an Indian, I say that, Trump has no business behaving like this with India, I don't understand why they have a problem with me. Why am I sucking up to anyone? Why am I getting a packet? Because, let's take the case of the US. At some summit somewhere, apparently somebody Indian called Bush Rambo, and an American journalist got up and protested and said, please don't call our president that. So, some things should be above this kind of silos and
call me old-fashioned, but what I will say at home will be very different from what I will say abroad.
Of course.
What I'm willing to hear at home is very different from what I'm willing to hear from somebody in the West outside India.
I remember when Operation Sindoor was on, somebody took an interview of Hina Rabbani Khar, and I felt they gave her a walkover, and I don't even think that interview should have been done, frankly. Yeah. Because, the Americans don't do it.
Yeah.
The BBC is not. The biggest story today is of what's happening in Iran, the Iran Revolution. The BBC has no time for it. Why? They're state funded. So, sometimes whatever they think is national interest, are we never supposed to ever think in national interest?
And another example from America is that the New York Times and the Washington Post both knew before America was going into Venezuela that they were going to go in. And the Venezuela operation has not been applauded by these newspapers, but as a courtesy to American troops, both papers decided not to publish the story till the operation was over. This is standard. To stand with your own country's troops is what you do as a citizen. Yeah. And I don't understand why there's a debate over it.
I don't understand why there was a debate over what you did, because you have never, and I want to make this very clear because there is so much nonsense. When I was researching my book, Barkha is anti-national, Barkha gave away locations, Barkha did this, Barkha did that. It is all utter bullshit. You've never once done it. You've always stood with our troops. You've always stood with the army. Yet, this whole disinfo war against you, they used all of this. And why? Two reasons why. Because A, you're a woman. B, you had the balls to literally go out there and cover something which was really an all-boys club. So this amount of nonsensical disinformation that was floated about you, as if you had no understanding, no sense, no sense of responsibility. And the same anchor, who sits only in the studio, who's never done any field reporting. Unlike us, we've both done war reporting. We've covered riots. This man sits in a studio and just opines on everybody. I mean, there's a newspaper, there's a magazine editor, I think, who's never done a single story in his life. And yet he sits on Twitter, in the most, Twitter or X or whatever it is now, and in the most sexist, bigoted and patriarchal terms comments on all our work. So, I mean, how do you respect such people as journalists?
What is your approach? Is your approach to call it out, to argue? Is your approach to ignore it? I have to say that as I've grown older, I've gone more towards the terrain of, this is beneath my contempt. But earlier, I used to definitely get into arguments. And it's a very hard call because sometimes you want to call out the falsehood because we're human. And also it's galling to be told, for me, it's just absolutely galling to be told, oh, you gave away a troop location. I mean, utter bullshit, pardon my language. But over time, you realize that the whole game is to somehow smear. It's a smear campaign.
Of course, it's a smear campaign.
Right? So what do you do when you come under attack using falsehoods? Not someone saying, I don't agree with Swati's journalism. Everybody's allowed to disagree with you or me or anybody else. But when they use falsehood to smear, what do you do?
Well, I have a very thin skin. I've taken, a particular propaganda site to court for just smearing me endlessly without reason, for using morph pictures, for just putting out plain lies about me. But I'll give you one recent example that happened to you, and it hurt me. It left me aghast. Somebody talking to you, you put out something of your parents' house.
Oh yeah!
You lost
oh my
both
God.
your parents. Oh my! Barkha, we are also human beings. As journalists, we have not signed up for abuse.
Yeah.
We take it a lot. But I mean, I know how hurtful it is. We are human beings. We've not signed up.
So let me tell the audience the story. So basically, my parents' old home, which is our family home, My sister and I don't live in that home anymore. So my old aunt lives in that home. She's 92 years old. And we haven't yet decided what do we do now that our parents are gone. That home is very, very dear to us. I lived in that home till I was 41 years old with my father. My father I lost in COVID. My mother I lost when I was 13 years old.
And your mother was one of the most well-known and, pioneer woman journalists, which people don't, I hope they know.
I don't know if they know, but thank you for mentioning Prabha.
Prabha Dutt is an inspiration, she really is.
Yeah. And a Instagram handle that looks at old homes in the capital reached out to us and said, your home is 50 years old. Can we do a story on it? And so they did a story. And somebody took out one image from 25 photographs and said, look at how rundown the kitchen is. And the next thing you knew, there were hundreds, maybe thousands of people commenting on the state of kitchen in my parents' home, which is an old home that hasn't been, actually, we haven't decided. It's such a difficult decision for me and my sister to decide what to do with it. And my sister called me in tears and said, I want to respond. And I said, don't respond. This is what they do. This is what they do. But once she responded, I felt I had to get in and, protect her from this crap. And I cannot even believe the commentary. It went from everything from, their classes to maybe they help. Maybe they never step into the kitchen. Such nonsense. And therefore the question becomes,
which is what I'm saying, that we are human beings. We have not signed up for abuse. Your parents are not there any longer. Shouldn't there be some boundaries? Shouldn't somebody's parents who are not there, all of us, both, I know how much you love your father, and you know how much, how much our parents mean to us.
Yeah.
Shouldn't some things be off limits? Nothing is off limits. And because we don't belong to these silos, other people are so precious that if you call out, I called out one, I will name her, Rana Ayub, allegedly defrauded, humongous amounts, millions of relief funds, which she collected for poor migrants during COVID. And now she has paid personal income tax and a tribunal has upheld it. And she also donated to the PM funds, the money that was left after the ED and the income tax case was filed, after abusing Modi day in, day out. So, why are you donating to that fund?
What did you make of that? I could not, talk about that issue publicly till now because we were both colleagues at the same newspaper. But what did you make of that?
So that's what I'm coming to. So now I simply put out a tweet of the income. I did not even comment. There was no comment there. I simply put out what the income tax tribunal, multi-bench, had ruled, and where she had paid the fine and she had accepted this was personal income and paid tax on it. My God, the attack I felt, it was like some precious flower. I was a bigot. I was an Islamophobe. I was jealous. I don't understand. Is this immunity that just because you're a minority journalist, you can get away with murder? You can do anything. You donate to Modi, that's kosher. You collect, do fraud, that's kosher. Every story is about you, that's kosher. Is this journalism?
She's argued in her defense that she's being targeted by the government because she's a Modi critic.
Really? You've stolen so much relief. You're still not in jail. People are. Then let's argue. Why is poor Omar Khalid in jail? Why is Rana Ayub not in jail? I think the government loves her. I think it's the government needs opponents like Rana Ayub who go out and cry about persecuted Muslims because it suits both sides. It suits the government because they want to put up a project image of being hard Hindutva, majoritarians, and it suits Rana Ayub. It suits both of them. I don't think what she does is journalism. I think what she does is, peddling real Muslim pain.
So when she or her supporters would argue, as they do, that irrespective of what you think of her approach to journalism, she is being targeted because she spoke up against Modi and the case.
How targeted?
They're arguing that the case is false.
Well, that's rubbish, Barkha. She raised money for COVID relief victims, the poorest of migrants, and apparently put that in fixed deposits and made investments out of it. And when caught, donated to PM Cares, a man who she criticizes every day. I thought she was raising money because she didn't want to donate to PM Cares. So, it's absurd. And she's also paid personal tax on it. So she's sort of accepted what she did. So, these charges are absurd. These are facts.
Unlike that book of hers, which nobody published and which the tapes have never been made public, these are facts. Yet, I was attacked, trolled, called an Islamophobe.
By who? By who?
By the leader of that was a gentleman called Hartosh Singh Bal, I think, who's never done a story in his life, and who said that who cares if this government, if an income tax tribunal rules. these are all fake cases. I mean, how can you give somebody a blanket clean chit? Have you ever got a blanket clean chit? The same gentleman, the same magazine smeared you over something else, and some other people have a blanket clean chit from anything. And I would also argue that why does the West have such a low standard? That if Olivia Nazi can be sacked by the New York Magazine for having a relationship with Robert Kennedy, why does the Washington Post not have a morality clause for their own columnists?
But if you're going to raise the Olivia case, then we have many such conflicts of interest in Indian media.
Why don't we cover it up, Barkha? Why don't we talk about it?
No, and I'm saying we've all been part of ecosystems where we've known those conflicts. And I think all you can hope to do is have disclosures. I think the failing is that we don't have proper disclosures.
We have no disclosures. You have people who are almost married to politicians who also report on those politicians. How fair is that? I mean, do you think the audience or the reader is a fool not to understand?
When you take these positions, what is the kind of blowback you get, and is it personal or is it public?
It's both. You are privately totally shunned. They hate you. They think that you're unnecessarily upsetting a cozy club. You're literally a girl who's kicked over the hornet's nest. And publicly, of course, nobody likes you, because the fact is that let's come back to media. I mean, there's a particular anchor who's got a sweetheart deal from Prasar Bharati, getting unheard of money, 15 crores per year, for just anchoring a program on our public broadcaster, which is paid for by taxpayers. And I put out that contract, his contract, in public, and I got an FIR in return.
An FIR for?
For Official Secrets Act.
For publishing that letter? For publishing
that.
And what has happened to that case?
That FIR was withdrawn because I said, this is absurd. I'm going to go to, you can arrest me if you like, because I think it's in public interest. The public should know that one man.
Who filed the FIR?
Prasar Bharati.
Asking why you had that piece of paper, or did they challenge its authenticity?
No, they said it was authentic and it was an Official Secrets Act and I should reveal who my source was. I said there is no chance of me revealing who my source was, because I think none of us would go to jail. And we've had many official secrets cases put under both of us, but I said I will not do it. I'm not revealing my source. Put me into jail. So I think that FIR has been finally withdrawn. But 15 crores for just being a cheerleader of the government, and if you expose that, you get an FIR. The contract is not cancelled. So, these are the perils of doing real journalism again.
What did you make of the very public fight? And I think we can here name names because both of the gentlemen fought publicly. The public fight between Arnab Goswami and Sudhir Chaudhary.
What does one say? It's the pot calling the kettle black.
But what did you make of it? Like, how have we reached this point where this is, as you said in the beginning of this conversation, politicians at least get along in personal spaces. And by the way, before you answer the Arnab Sudhir question, one of the more amusing videos recently has been Naveen Jindal, the family wedding in Mr. Jindal's house, where Kangana Ranaut and Mahua Moitra and Supriya Sule were all on stage dancing together. And it is proof that politicians are able to bury their differences on social occasions.
Yeah.
Journalists, we in the media, absolutely are not able to be friends in that manner.
Absolutely. But why do you think that is? You tell me, then I'll tell you my take on it.
No, I think my take is that somewhere the resentment, there is so much viciousness, at least that has been my experience in large quarters of this fraternity. And I can't understand that viciousness. I do not understand why there isn't a live and let live. Everybody, there's room for everybody. Do your own thing, let people be. But that's my philosophy. And my philosophy is also to sort of keep my friends from a non-journalistic space very close to me, because I know that they're not interested in these debates that we have. All my closest friends are not in the media.
Yeah.
And that keeps me healthy and sane.
What does someone do with both of us have known each other since college.
Yeah.
So, what does what do? I mean, someone like you.
But I'm saying largely. I'm just saying largely.
Because you cannot be friends with journalists anymore, because the problem is these ideological silos. Now, Arnab Goswami and Sudhir Chaudhary, two cases.
But they're in the same perceived ideological silo. I don't know where liberals are now placing Arnab these days, but largely Arnab and Sudhir are perceived to be in the same ideological silo. So they're not having an ideological quarrel.
But one has got 15 crores contract.
Okay.
And the other is saying, I don't like it. I mean, come on.
You think that's all it is?
It's a fight.
You think that's all it is?
Of course, it's a survival of the fittest. I mean, there is a bunch of people who are surviving on crumbs. who are not doing journalism, who are not doing independent journalism. They're surviving on crumbs. Who have no ideological commitments. They are only fighting for crumbs. And they're taking positions which are, they're basically now seeking attention and fighting for crumbs that, I'm loyaler than you. And why has that one got more than I have got? So, I think liberals are fools. So anybody who takes this as journalism seriously is a fool. And I think people are seeing through that, which is why, I think people watch Mojo so much more than any of these channels are watched.
But this quarrel between the two gentlemen.
It's very funny.
Did you laugh?
I did. I could not stop laughing. And I cannot stop laughing at people who take both of these guys seriously. Because it's quite hilarious. It really is.
There's a larger question though. It's a genuine challenge for journalists. When you live in such a politically polarized environment and you're expected to be this way or that way, your growth, frankly, is much faster if you are biased.
And of course, and by the way, what do these people want? They don't want to do stories. They want Rajya Sabha seats. They want access. They want money. Let's be very clear. They want funding. Who are the people who are doing really well in the past 11 years? Because we've got a very, very committed media. I won't call it Godi media. I won't call it what I call it Panna Pramukhs. But it's a very, very committed media. It's a media which is committed to one very solidly to a particular political party. Their stories are very, very geared to it. There are also corporate groups who own the media, which also decide the direction which the media reports. So the media, the journalists...
By the way, that happens the world over. Look at the Post after Jeff Bezos took it over.
True.
The promoter decided...
The coverage.
The editorial line.
The coverage, absolutely.
It's not unique to India.
It's normal. But the thing is, Barkha, that these journalists have decided they don't want story. They want Rajya Sabha seats. Now, let's talk about what we call unaligned media. Let's not talk about the most obvious cases of, who are saying thuk jihad or love jihad or doing incitement every day or saying that, apni maryada rakhiye, whatever. You are a journalist for 40 years. You suddenly take a Rajya Sabha seat from a political party. Okay. And you are overnight a politician. How do we trust your journalism? Of 40 years. Your spouse still continues to be an unbiased journalist. Can you possibly be unbiased when your partner is an active politician? Is it possible? Can you join a political party, write a book on a political leader, join a political party, leave that political party and come back to journalism? How does that happen?
Maybe the answer would be the audience has the final judgment on that. Because it couldn't be the first time that somebody is married to somebody who's in politics and so on. I'm just giving you the counterfactual.
But then the same people give us lectures on, balance and, how journalism cannot be this, how journalism cannot be that. Are you really as unbiased as you claim to be?
And so what is the solution according to you? Because these things must happen and do happen the world over, right? We could not be the only country where there is a promoter determining editorial line, where relationships take place between journalists and politicians, where a journalist decides to enter politics, but his or her spouse is still a journalist.
But then comes back. There's one journalist who wrote a book about a political leader, joined a political party, and now he's back into journalism. Now, would you do that?
See, I would not join politics because I would not, right? But I'm just saying that this is happened.
Were you ever in journalism for a Rajya Sabha seat?
No, never. I'm saying, but that's me. I'm saying my eyes are open to the fact that this is not a new thing. This has happened in the past. It's going to happen in the future. And so my question to you is, what is the most ethical way out of these situations?
Well, like in the US, at least the columnists do have a certain ideology, and I think they're pretty open about it, and I think they're pretty well paid, and I don't think these backhanders happen. I will give you an example of the same of another couple who were sort of differing between joining this political party. So the political party was, opening a Goa thing, opening their innings in Goa. They just popped up there mysteriously. And Arvind Kejriwal himself told me that he was in negotiations with this couple to join up. And finally, that didn't happen. But while both of them continued in active journalism. Now, when people troll us, when people attack journalists, when propaganda sites call us out, why are we giving them this fodder? Shouldn't we also be a little bit ethical? Shouldn't we at least have some investment in our own profession? Shouldn't we think that journalism is something so honorable that we don't need to be doing these little side gigs? and getting into bed with politicians.
So you spoke about the Western model where at least opinion columnists have an open slant. Now, my question is a larger question. Opinion is replacing reportage. Even those who are now, one person digital channels, and, many of us have left legacy media and are now in the digital space. And many of my colleagues in the digital space are very openly slanted this way or that way. And their entire content is opinion driven. And the audience, clearly, there is an audience for it. The internet loves bias. The internet loves polarization or polarity, and it actually rewards that with greater numbers. What do you make of this trend of opinion replacing, I want to say neutrality, but it's a much maligned word. So I'll say opinion replacing clinical facts.
Well, what you said is absolutely true, and it's very sad because, again, that is not journalism. That is not journalism as we know it. That is pure opinion. And also, if your audience, your audience should know that that is not opinion which is unfiltered or really their own. That is also opinion which has clearly been paid for by a certain section of politics which feels they're not being covered enough by mainstream media. So you have a lot of opinion makers on platforms like YouTube who get a lot of funding and which is much more disguised, much more hidden. Like the ones, the people who are pro-government are pretty much evident. It's like...
It's obvious.
It's obvious, it's written on their faces, everybody knows, and they themselves know, and they're mocked for it. This lot is considered holier than thou. They're considered to be honest journalists, but we both know that's not true. Because they are also getting funded and hugely funded from the opposition. So, there should be literally buyers beware, caveat emptor, because, this lot is giving you what they're giving you as their opinion is actually shilling.
But, the structural problem with journalism today is actually money. And I'm glad you've touched upon this concept of political money. And actually, this problem exists. It has existed even prior to this phase of journalism. Newspapers are dependent. And this is pre-Modi on government advertising, right?
And there was, by the way, enough arm twisting. I mean, Modi may be doing it in a more cruder way, but there was enough arm twisting earlier also. Ads were withdrawn from papers. Huge government ads were withdrawn from people they didn't like. I mean, so, none of this is very new. It's in a much more... toxic form now possibly, but none of this is new.
So isn't there a structural problem with the fact that nobody actually knows how to generate revenue around journalism? So what are the models? You go to governments for advertisement. That's a big source of revenue for so many people in legacy media. Or you make yourself more and more shrill and more opinionated because you think that's more hits, so more money. Or you go to corporates, big corporations, and you say, please fund us. In all of these, there is a potential conflict of interest in the journalism you can and you can't do. So isn't the problem actually how to make news pay for itself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who pays for news?
Yeah.
And I know why people don't see. The point is that, because you have things like X, etc., everybody wants news. It could be fake news, but it has to be an echo chamber that is tailored for you. So nobody wants pure, unadulterated, real news. Like you do news, you do debates, which have actually got both sides. I've seen other YouTube debates. There is no side. There's only one gang of people squawking away about zulm and etc. etc. So I don't know. I mean, this is a very fundamental question. Do people really even want to pay for news anymore, or do they only want to pay for their echo chambers?
So let me ask you in the end how it's been for you personally as an equal opportunity offender who has in this conversation
offended everybody.
How has it been for you personally?
It's been terrible. I think it's been terrible for everyone, but at least Barkha. Luckily for me, I love what I do. I'm really not in it for a Rajya Sabha seat. if I ever get a Rajya Sabha seat, which is most unlikely, I'm sure this will go viral and they'll be like, what a fraud she was, sell out, etc., etc. I love what I do. I love telling the story. I don't want to be the story. To me, journalism is something that is a privilege to do. And I don't care. The medium may change, the method may change, but I will always want to tell a story. I'm very nosy. I'm very stubborn. I'm very, very, I think the only quality I like about myself is my courage. And, as long as all of those things exist, I love journalism. I will not stop telling the story.
So what would you say to I sometimes think that if I were a 16-year-old today and I was in school and I was looking at this journalism, would I want to be a journalist?
No.
right?
No.
So therefore, my last question to you, Swati, on this media podcast is, what would you say to a young girl or boy who's in school today considering their professional options? How would you inspire anybody to still be part of the media as we know it today?
Well, I mean, you have to really have a passion for telling the story, not a passion to be a celebrity, which is a byproduct. I think we haven't talked about that, but
yeah, we should talk a little bit about that. The hunt for celebrity and your 15 seconds of fame and your mug on camera. I want to
be Barkha Dutt, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
That cannot be the reason you want to be a journalist. If you want to be Barkha Dutt, work your ass off. Go out there in COVID, cover it. You lost your dad, but you're still telling the story.
Yeah.
You're telling the story in Kargil and getting pilloried for it. So those are the reasons to be a journalist, because you want to tell the story, not to have that byproduct of celebrity. Honestly, So
how would you inspire somebody today to say it's still worth it?
I think it's a very peculiar passion. It's a kida, and once you get that kida, unfortunately, it's a.
I always tell people, young people, if you don't love it, you will hate it. Yeah. So please do it only if you love it.
If you love it to the detriment of everything else in your life,
Yes.
Like you and me, if some kid today tells us I'm not well, or we would not even dream of saying I'm not well. We would go and do a story on, there were some people talking about period leave, etc. Such things never even occurred to me. I was so desperate to get a chance to tell the story. You have to be crazily, passionately involved with news, with stories, with just breaking the story. That has to be the passion. Otherwise, don't be in it.
I think that is the perfect note to say, may your passion always ride you through every storm, Swati.
Yes,
there are many storms that will follow this podcast for sure. I'm sure you're ready to brace all of them. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.